My son said it was final. He forgot who learned finality the hard way. The coffee maker clicked alive, then began its slow drip. The front door opened without a knock. No pause. No morning. Only one person still walked into my house like the hinges owed him, my son, Jason J. Shaw. I didn't turn around. I let the sound of the drip steady my breathing. He stood behind me, quiet in that heavy way people get when they've rehearsed a speech and want you to surrender before you hear it. I stirred sugar. Slow circles. Slow air. The spoon tapped porcelain, and his voice landed, flat and certain. He said his wife, their kids, and her mother would be moving in. The decision was already made. I lived alone. I had 3 bedrooms. It made sense. Sense. People use that word when they mean do what I want and don't argue. I lifted my mug. The coffee tasted metallic. My hand didn't shake. My mouth didn't open. But something old inside me shifted, like a fault line deciding it won't carry the weight anymore. He walked through the living room, pointing like a contractor who'd already closed the deal. He said the kids would take my sewing room. He said Rosa, his mother-in-law, would get the guest room because she needed fewer steps. He said he and Brianna would figure out the rest. He didn't see my knuckles whitening around the mug. He didn't notice the way the air in the house changed, how a soft quiet can turn into a blade. People think revenge is loud. The truth is, when it's clean, it's quiet. I watched him measure corners that didn't belong to him. He spoke the language of ownership without paying the price. He came to announce, not to ask. He came to claim, not to care. I gave a small nod, the kind you give a man who forgot how many times you've already said yes. He took it as consent. He always did. When the door shut behind him, keys chimed like a tiny victory chant. I poured the rest of the coffee down the sink. The drain swallowed the bitterness. The sound of water pulled me backward 2 years, to this same kitchen, this same counter, this same quiet. Back then Brianna called me sobbing. Her mother had collapsed. A mass. Pressure on her organs. No insurance. No plan. They didn't know what to do. I did. I walked to my bedroom closet and reached for a small blue box I had tucked away after my husband, Robert, died. The ring he bought when love still felt like a promise instead of a duty. I sold it the next morning. I asked the jeweler what they would give me for a life I no longer wore on my hand. It covered most of the cost. I covered the rest. Jace thanked me in a hurry. Brianna cried. Rosa never called. I never told anyone how much that ring had really cost. This house was the only thing I built entirely on my own. 24 years of payments. Night shifts cleaning floors at a hospital. Daylight hours bent over hems and torn seams at the alteration shop. Blisters, skipped meals, bill by bill, until the deed sat in my name. I saved 5 months for the guest room so visitors felt like guests. I turned the smallest room into a sewing sanctuary where the machine's hum drowned out grief. And now my rooms were square footage to be reassigned. My life, a floor plan to be redrawn by someone who didn't pay for the paper. Have you ever loved someone who mistook it for access? I stood at the sink, palms on the cool edge, and felt the ground under me steady. I had stretched and said yes for years, thinning myself so others could be comfortable. But this time, the quiet inside me didn't ask for peace. It asked for order. Jace texted that he'd be back soon. He said they were already packing. He said a van would be easy to rent. He said moving in was the smart move. I set the mug down and looked around my kitchen, the one space no one would claim without asking again. On the table, sunlight laid a clean rectangle. In my mind, a different plan took its first breath. People think surrender is polite. Sometimes it's just the setup. Jace came back early, eager to stamp his choice on my rooms. He repeated the layout like a checklist. The kids would take my sewing space. Rosa needed the guest room because stairs were hard. He and Brianna would sleep on the pull-out for now. I knew what for now meant. It meant until you stop fighting. I kept my voice level. I asked where they planned to put their boxes, their noise, their arguments. He heard permission, not questions. He kissed my cheek, said a van would be easy, said Saturday would run smooth. The door shut behind him. The house exhaled. I counted to 10, then reached for the landline. My hands were steady. My pulse was slow. People imagine anger as heat. Mine works like winter, clear, quiet, and planned. First call, the county clerk. I confirmed process, timelines, the exact forms, the stamp that makes strangers believe a fact. Second call, a lawyer and neighbor recommended. We agreed on a short consult and a clean paper trail. Third call, an old favor, someone who still owed me for a night shift I picked up when his life fell apart. He remembered. He moved fast. My voice never rose. My name never shook. On a yellow pad, I wrote 3 lines, deed copies, sale options, emergency plan. Then I wrote 2 dates, today's date and Saturday's. A deadline tight enough to hold. By afternoon Brianna showed up with sweet rolls and a smile coated in sugar. She walked my hallway like an aisle in a store, tapping curtains, counting outlets, asking nothing. She said the kids had already packed most of their toys. She said Mateo had picked a corner of my sewing room for his base. She laughed like it was cute. I nodded once. In her mind, things were official. In mine, they were, too, just not the way she imagined. People think generosity ends with a thank you. It ends when someone mistakes it for a right. When she left, the house became itself again. Sun on the table. The hum of the fridge. The soft scratch of my pen. I pulled a fireproof folder from the hall closet and laid it open. Birth certificates. Insurance cards. The original deed with my maiden name crossed and my married name typed beneath. I added fresh copies, tabbed in bright blue. I clipped a letter for my doctor, capacity statement ready, no gaps to argue. A plan is a kindness to your future self. Near sunset, Nora Bennett arrived with black coffee in a paper cup and the look of a woman who has seen this game before. I told her everything, from the morning drip of the coffee to the sugar on Brianna's smile. She listened without interrupting, only squeezing my hand when I spoke about the ring and the bill I paid with silence. She said this wasn't love, it was control dressed like logic. I didn't want to hear it. I knew she was right. We spread documents across the table and built a clean spine for my next moves, deed copies, will draft notes, a list of accounts, the contact sheet for the lawyer, the number for a realtor I had shortlisted years ago and never called. We dated every sticky note. We made a 1-page brief in simple words, the kind even a hostile ear can follow. We sealed the folder. The click sounded like a line being drawn. Have you ever felt the floor steady under your feet while nothing around you moves? That was the feeling. Not rage. Not revenge. Order. Space. A mother deciding where her edges actually are. I washed 2 cups and set them to dry. The night settled soft against the windows. In the morning I would wear a plain coat and walk into a building I used to fear. I would ask for my own money like it was mine. I would sign where the lines told me to sign. People think surrender is the end. Sometimes it's just the last quiet before the turn. Monday arrived the color of dishwater sky. I put on a plain coat and walked into the bank like I belonged there, because I did. The lobby smelled like toner and carpet cleaner. I took a number and stood still. People imagine courage as noise. Mine is the kind that doesn't blink. At the window I asked for a transfer. The teller checked the amount, then looked at me over the rim of her glasses. She asked if I was sure. I said yes. Not because the sum was large, but because it was mine. The money came from nights pushing a mop through hospital hallways and mornings bent over other people's seams at the alteration shop. Every dollar held a piece of my back, my knees, my patience. We moved the account, secure, private, clean. I set a new password that only sounded like a word to me. Paper printed, stamped, and slid across the counter. My hands didn't shake when I signed. A plan needs proof, chaos hates proof. Outside, the wind had a soft edge. I ate a granola bar in the car and watched the light change on the hood, like the day was deciding which way to lean. Then I drove across town to meet a realtor from my short list, Tasha Reed. 1 story, quiet street, a small yard where sunlight pooled. I didn't ask for staging or a pitch. I asked for the papers. Tasha walked me through the contract in simple lines. Price, contingencies, dates, a clean exit if the inspection shouted. Nothing shouted. I initialed and signed. She said closings can take time. I told her I understood. I wasn't buying speed, I was buying silence. A bungalow can be many things, mine would be air and light and no footsteps I didn't invite. Have you noticed how ink makes resolve feel real? By mid-afternoon the file sat in Tasha's hands, neat and inevitable. The house I had carried for 24 years was already loosening its hold. Not a goodbye yet, more like a friend I'd drifted from without a fight. Some places keep you alive until you can keep yourself. On the drive home, my phone buzzed. Jace texted to ask when they could start moving in. He said Saturday would be smooth. He said a truck would be cheaper if we booked now. He said the kids were excited. I typed, let's talk first. He read negotiation. I meant closure. At my kitchen table I lined up what Saturday would actually be, a locked door, a straight spine, and words I would say once. I checked my folder again, deed copies up front, bank confirmations behind them, the lawyer's card paperclipped to a 1-page summary anyone could follow. I added a blank sticky note with a single word, boundary. The house grew quiet around me, the way a stage goes still before the curtain lifts. I boiled water, poured tea, and traced the steam with my eyes until it thinned to nothing. Somewhere across town, a small bungalow waited without knowing it was mine. Somewhere across my life, a line I'd never crossed was coming into view. People think power arrives with shouting. Sometimes it arrives with a stamp, a signature, and a key you don't have yet, but will. Saturday had a time, 9:12 a.m. He would bring a truck. I would bring a decision. Saturday arrived with a number on it, 9:12 a.m. He would bring a truck. I would bring a boundary. I woke before the sun and walked each room, not for goodbye, for order. Windows latched. Thermostat reset. Mail forward confirmed. Spare keys lifted from the ceramic dish by the stove. The folder waited on the dining table, tabs bright, paper straight, proof stacked like armor. I brewed coffee and let it cool on purpose. The quiet felt exact, like a line drawn with a ruler. Outside, a leaf blower grumbled 2 streets over. A dog argued with a bird. Somewhere a screen door squeaked and shut. Inside, the house held its breath with me. At 9:11 the truck rolled up, large and certain, engine humming hot diesel. Jace jumped down first with a clipboard of confidence. Brianna followed, voice sharp with logistics. The kids tumbled out barefoot, pointing at windows as if pointing could make them theirs. Boxes labeled toys, kitchen, playroom paraded onto my driveway like flags in a captured city. No one knocked. They moved toward the door like gravity owned it. It didn't open. I stepped onto the porch and met them halfway. My voice was level. Nothing's coming in. Jace laughed the way people laugh when they think you're being cute. He told me to quit playing and unlock the door. He said they had a schedule and a crew. I shook my head. The sale is done, I said. This isn't your move-in. Air stopped. Brianna's smile fell as if a string had been cut. She whispered the word sold, like saying it softer might make it less true. I told them a woman from Savannah had signed, loved gardening, and wasn't planning to convert anything. The point wasn't the buyer. The point was ownership. Decisions had been made by the person who paid for this roof. The clipboard slipped from Jace's hand and clapped the step. He asked if I was serious, asked why I hadn't told them, why I hadn't asked them. He said they had given notice to their landlord, that the kids were excited, that I was choosing a house over a family. I kept my tone even and my feet planted. I said he built plans around a home that wasn't his. I said I wasn't throwing them out, I was keeping them out. One of the movers cleared his throat, eyes traveling from me to the truck. He called me ma'am and asked if they should unload. I told him no, they'd be taking everything back. He nodded, relieved to have clarity. Tape hissed. Ratchet straps clicked. Boxes climbed backward into the truck the way they had just climbed down. The sound of work reversed the hope they had packed into cardboard. Across the street, a curtain shifted, someone watching, learning. Mateo stood still now, small hands knotting the hem of his shirt, the kind of quiet that remembers. No one corrected him. Better that the truth land clean. Jace came up the steps fast, anger old and familiar in his shoulders. He started a speech about duty and space and 3 empty bedrooms. I let him spend the words. When he ran out, I told him we could talk like adults on the porch or he could leave. The door behind me stayed locked. The key in my pocket had a new weight, like metal that finally knew its job. Brianna cried the tidy kind of tears that ask for an audience. I didn't perform. She walked back to the truck, lifted a box labeled playroom, set it down, and stared at nothing. The movers kept their pace, efficient, professional, men who had watched families untangle 100 different ways. When the last box was reloaded, the crew chief tipped his cap. Jay searched my face for the softness I used to wear. He didn't find it. The truck doors slammed. The engine caught. They left with everything they brought because none of it belonged here. The porch settled. The neighborhood resumed its small noises. I looked at the house I had carried for 24 years and felt the clean relief of a story ending on time. Not victory. Not gloating. Just air. Power doesn't need applause. It needs a line that holds, and a lock that means it. He brought a mediator. I brought paper. 2 days later Jace returned with Frank Dalton, the family peacemaker who speaks in soft edges. They didn't wait for permission. Memory opened the door for them, I didn't. I led them to the dining room where 3 mugs waited, 2 cooling, 1 warm. The warm one was mine. Beside it, the folder lay closed and square, proof stacked in quiet order. Jace started fast, all friction. He said I'd humiliated them on the curb, turned the kids' big day into a lesson in shame, blindsided Brianna, sabotaged their housing. He wanted apologies, then access, then keys to rooms he still called ours. He pointed at the hallway like a man pointing at a map he never paid for. Frank swapped heat for history. He painted birthdays in this house, the casseroles after Robert's funeral, scraped knees on the back steps. He called me a peacemaker. He called this a misunderstanding. He asked what had gotten into me, like resolve was a foreign object I should spit out. I let them exhaust their scripts. When the room thinned to quiet, I slid the folder to the center of the table and opened it like a door that only swings one way. First page, the signed sale agreement. The signature sat on the line like a small flag that says mine. Second, notice of transfer and a clean escrow timeline. Third, bank confirmations, new accounts moved and sealed, sensitive lines blacked out for privacy. Paper makes courage visible. Clipped on top, my doctor's capacity letter, current and precise. Beneath it, the lawyer's card with a 1-page brief in short sentences anyone could follow, what belongs to me, what I have already done, what will happen next if people insist on confusion. Jace read the first page, skipped the second, circled back like order could save him from outcome. Color left his face, then rushed in hot. He said I'd planned this behind their backs. I told him I planned it despite him. He said I was cutting myself off from family. I told him I was cutting myself free. Frank leaned in, palms open, voice low. He warned this could sour holidays, confuse the kids, turn little quarrels into old scars. I tapped the capacity letter with one finger. Tell your client I'm his mother, not his property. The line hung there and did what soft voices never do, it closed the distance. Jace pushed his chair back hard enough to scrape wood. He said the buyer could collapse the deal. He said lawyers could slow things down. He said he wasn't done. I told him I was. The house was spoken for. My boundaries were, too. If he wanted to talk like adults, we could. If he wanted a stage, he'd have to rent one. Silence arrived and did its quiet work. Without witnesses, theatrics looked small. He stood, reached for nothing because nothing here was his, and headed for the doorway. Frank followed, shoulders tired, eyes on the floor like he'd seen this ending in other kitchens. The door clicked shut. The house breathed out, the soft release a room gives when pressure leaves. I stacked the papers again, square on square until the folder felt like a spine. I finished the warm coffee. The bitterness was gone, the heat remained. People think power is a shout. Most days it's a checklist. In the hallway mirror I caught a glance of myself, not the silver hair, not the soft lines time left, but the eyes. Steady. Unapologetic. The kind that can sit through storms and still prefer windows open. I took out my phone and called Nora. She answered on the second ring, voice ready. I told her it was time to pack, time to label what stayed and what would go, time to meet me at the bungalow when Tasha called. She said she'd bring boxes and thick markers. Black, I told her. I want the words to show. I hung up, slid the folder into the fireproof case, and set it by the door. The house felt light, like a garment finally altered to the right fit. People think closure is a ceremony. Today it was paper, a call, and a plan I could lift with one hand. Nora arrived with boxes, tape, and thick black markers. We didn't talk about feelings, we labeled. Kitchen, keep. Linen, donate. Sewing notions, pack. The house felt like a garment on a table, seams exposed, ready for a final hem. Every label made the rooms lighter. Every strip of tape sounded like a small answer. We moved through closets and drawers the way nurses move through night rounds, quiet, precise, and done right the first time. I took only what worked in a small place, dishes I used, the quilt Robert and I picked before the hospital days, the lamp with the soft shade that made winter kinder. I wrapped the blue jewelry box that once held my wedding ring and set it at the bottom of a bin. Some containers hold what they no longer carry. Between boxes, we drank coffee at the bare dining table. The folder sat in the center, tabs bright, a spine for the next hours. When Nora asked if I felt scared, I told her the truth. Fear had burned itself out years ago when I learned how to survive tired. What I felt now was order, almost gentle. She nodded like a woman who had prayed for this day and finally saw it arrive. Tasha called mid-morning. The closing office was ready. Papers were stacked. I grabbed the folder, my purse, and a pen that always works. We drove across town without music. The trees along the avenue looked washed and new, as if the weather had started over and invited me to try again, too. The title office smelled like paper and lemon cleaner. A calm woman behind a calm desk handed me forms in a neat stack. Read, sign, initial, date. I didn't rush. I traced each line with my eyes and wrote my name with the same steady hand I used to hem dress pants for men who needed to look sharp by morning. The sum wasn't a fortune, but it was exact. Less square footage, more quiet. Fewer rooms, more light. Enough. People think relief is noisy. Mine sounded like pens on paper. When the last page slid into the finished pile, the woman smiled and reached into a small dish. She placed a single silver key on the table. Its teeth shone like a new idea. Tasha said, "Welcome home, Evelyn." The words landed soft and certain, the way a bird chooses a branch and stays. I put the key in my palm and felt how light it was compared to a ring I once sold to save someone else's mother. The math was clear. Rings promise. Keys decide. We drove straight to the bungalow. One story. Shaded porch. A patch of yard where sunlight pooled like warm water. Inside, the air held the smell of fresh paint and new lumber. A window in the kitchen threw a white rectangle across the counter. A fan turned lazily, like no one would hurry me again. I opened cabinets just to hear them close. I turned the tap to listen to water I didn't have to defend. There were no footsteps stomping entitlement. No voices measuring rooms as if square feet translate to ownership. No plans announced over my life. Only space. Air. Mine. I set the folder on the new table and breathed. Not a dramatic breath, an honest one, the kind that doesn't ask permission. We unpacked the first box labeled kitchen and set plates into a cabinet that fit them without effort. Nora hung the soft shade lamp near the couch and laughed when it clicked on the first try. She wrote my new address on a sticky note and stuck it to the fridge door, center and straight. We didn't bless the place with speeches. We blessed it with trash bags and a broom. Before we left, I walked the small rooms again, counting not losses but anchors. Bed. Table. Lamp. Window. And the key, cool against my palm. The old house received no goodbye. I owed it nothing. I owed myself everything. That night I slept at Nora's with a packed bag and my folder on the chair. New homes deserve their first dark alone. Morning would bring boxes, careful steps, and an easy lock that turned without a fight. A week later, the phone would ring with a lawyer on the other end, and my paperwork would answer the way kindness sometimes has to: firm, dated, notarized. For now, the key lay on the nightstand, light as a promise I finally kept to myself. A week after the key slid onto my nightstand, the phone rang early. The voice on the line had the tone of a man hired to turn feelings into leverage. He represented Jace. He said the word duress like it could undo ink. He said phrases like not in her right mind and questionable capacity. He sounded polite the way a lockpick is polite, quiet until the tumblers move. I let him finish. Then I opened the fireproof case and set the folder on the table. Tabs bright. Edges square. People think power is rage. Mine is paperwork dated in black ink. I told him a capacity letter from my physician sat on top, current and precise. I told him the sale documents were notarized, the escrow timeline clean, the funds accounted for, and the new accounts private. I told him any attempt to stall would meet the same silence that had met his client on my porch. He asked for copies. I said he'd have them within the hour. Nora brewed coffee while I fed the fax. Page by page, the machine hummed like a bee that knew its job. Capacity letter, deed transfer, escrow schedule, bank confirmations with sensitive lines blacked, the one-page brief in short sentences even a hostile ear could follow. I sent a scan by email, too. Redundancy is just kindness wearing boots. He called back softer. He asked if I'd consider a delay for the sake of the children. He said housing was tight. He said my choice had created hardship. He tried to trade guilt for access. I said, tell your client I'm his mother, not his property. Then I let silence do the rest. Silence is a mirror for people who don't know what they look like. Have you noticed how fast noise shrinks when facts arrive? He pivoted to tone. He said we all wanted peace. He said Jace loved me. He said families bend. I told him families also learn. Mine was learning that love isn't a key. If Jace wanted a conversation, he could have one, on my porch, during daylight, with respect. The house wasn't a leverage point anymore. It wasn't even mine to offer. The papers had taken that out of the argument the way a tide takes footprints. When we hung up, Nora slid a mug across the table. I wrapped both hands around it and felt the heat settle into my bones. Outside, the street moved through its weekday rhythm, delivery vans, a neighbor's radio, a dog in training learning not to pull. Inside, the air felt plain and honest. Paper can do that. It takes drama and turns it into dates. Tasha texted to confirm the last small step, utilities transferred, final receipt ready, a tidy list of numbers I could file and forget. I put each slip into a clear sleeve. Order is a comfort you earn. Jace tried once more, this time by message. He said he needed time. He said I was overreacting. He said the kids would think I didn't care. I typed a short reply and read it twice before sending. I wrote that Mateo was welcome to visit, that I would pick a day for each child, that I would keep a drawer with crayons and snacks and a blanket that smelled like clean air. I wrote that I would meet Jace outside. Boundaries, like doors, work best when they close and open on purpose. No part of me wanted to punish. I wanted peace to stop being the prize and start being the floor. Nora and I packed another box for the bungalow and labeled it front closet, keep. Coats. Umbrella. A spare set of house shoes. I set a small basket by the door for little hands that arrive and need somewhere safe to put treasures. A shell. A marble. A found coin. A clean place teaches people how to enter. By evening, the lawyer hadn't called back. He didn't need to. The papers had spoken already. I put the folder away, wiped the table, and opened the window a few inches. The room breathed. So did I. People think closure is a verdict. It's a routine done right, cups washed, locks set, a porch light that says yes when you mean it. The first visit came on a bright afternoon that smelled like cut grass. I set a small basket by the door for small treasures and a pair of house shoes in kid sizes. The crayons waited in their drawer. The blanket on the couch held the clean scent of new laundry. I opened the front windows 2 inches so the bungalow could breathe with us. A knock, polite, measured. I checked the peephole and saw what I'd asked for, 2 grandkids, not a crowd. Jay stood behind them on the porch, hands in his pockets, the old impatience tucked away under new caution. Boundaries teach. The good ones also soften. I opened the door and crouched to their eye level. We went over the plan the way teachers do roll call. Shoes off at the mat. Inside voices. Hands washed first, snack second, drawing third. They nodded hard enough to make hair bounce. I looked up at Jace and kept it simple. You're welcome to wait on the porch. He nodded. It was our truce, love without access, time without trespass. Inside, the house changed scale. Small feet padded across the rug. The fridge door opened and shut with care. We poured apple juice into cups that didn't spill when hands were excited. I set crackers on a plate and added 2 strawberries for the idea of celebration. They drew rectangles and circles that turned into houses and keys and suns with too many rays. Mateo labeled his drawing Nana's house, letters leaning like they were learning to stand. I taped the pictures to the side of the fridge and told them paper could make a wall feel friendly. Every few minutes I glanced at the porch. Jay sat in the old metal chair Nora had found at a yard sale, the one that sighed when someone heavier than memory took a seat. I brought him iced tea once, set it on the small table, and stepped back. We didn't talk about the curb or the folder or Savannah. We talked about the weather, and how Mateo liked dinosaurs this month, and how his sister had learned to braid. Peace isn't dramatic. It's small talk that stays small. Back inside, the kids migrated to the soft blanket and built a fort that didn't need chairs. We read a book with big pictures and short sentences. The fan turned lazy circles above us, pushing cool air across warm cheeks. They asked if the bungalow had a backyard. I said yes, but today we were staying inside. Safety isn't a fence, it's a rule that holds. When the clock on the stove reached the time we'd agreed on, I clapped once, light and clear. We cleaned up crumbs and capped crayons. Hands washed again. Shoes on. I folded the blanket and smoothed the couch like a reset. Each child chose a treasure from the basket, a smooth white shell and a glass marble that threw little rainbows when the sun caught it just right. I told them treasures had to leave when kids did. They nodded like trust and rules could share a pocket. At the door, I knelt for hugs. Their arms wrapped tight and quick, the kind that doesn't clutch. On the porch, Jay stood, careful not to cross the threshold. He thanked me for the visit in a voice that didn't push. I said, "Same time next week." He agreed. We let the quiet fill in what we weren't ready to say. They walked down the steps together. The shell and the marble flashed once in the light. The porch chair exhaled when it was empty. I closed the door and leaned my back against it, not from strain, from habit. Old muscles learn new work. In the kitchen, I wiped the table in slow circles and felt the bungalow settle again. The drawings on the fridge made a new kind of noise, the gentle brag of a home that can finally hold without breaking. I put 2 extra crackers back in the box and thought about how love changes shape when it grows up. It stops performing. It holds a time slot. It keeps a drawer for crayons and snacks. Outside, a neighbor's wind chimes caught a quick breeze and let it go. I stood at the window and watched porch light skip across the small front steps. The day folded itself into evening with no sharp edges. In the old house, this hour had felt like a negotiation. Here it felt like a room with good light. People think peace is a prize. It's a practice. It's a map by the door and rules that fit small shoes. It's iced tea on a table and a father on a porch learning how to wait without asking for the key. Have you ever noticed how a home sounds different when it's safe? Less echo, more breath. My mornings belong to me again. The coffee maker clicks alive, then breathes its slow steam while the windows open 2 inches to let the day come in on purpose. I move through the bungalow the way a lighthouse turns, steady, unhurried, sure of its job. Dishes dried last night stack where they belong. The soft shade lamp waits by the chair like a small sun I can switch on. Outside, the street keeps a gentle rhythm, tires on asphalt, someone's radio, a laugh that doesn't ask for attention. Inside, the rooms keep mine. I water a plant that likes the kitchen window and tie the trash bag with a clean knot. Peace is a list finished without witnesses. Only invited footsteps enter my home. That's the rule and the comfort. The doorbell rings at the hour we set, 2 small faces appear in the glass like bright coins pressed to a window. We repeat the routine we built together. Shoes off. Hands washed. A snack that doesn't crumble too much. Drawing time. The crayons click back into their tray, a tiny choir of colored yes. They whisper about dinosaurs and spelling lists and the kind of secrets kids believe are heavy. I place their pictures on the side of the fridge, suns with too many rays, houses with square smiles, and the kitchen wall learns to brag. Jay sits on the porch in the metal chair that sighs for him and no one else. I bring him iced tea and a napkin folded into a triangle. We talk about small things that keep their shape. Weather. A book someone at his job mentioned. The good tomatoes at the corner market. We don't talk about the curb or the folder or words like duress. We let time scuff the edges off hard nouns until they stop cutting. He thanks me for the visit. I say, "Same time next week," and the porch keeps the promise. When they leave, the bungalow exhales. I wipe the table in slow circles and listen to the fan count beats I don't have to measure. If you've ever lived on alert, you know how holy plain moments are. They don't sparkle. They land and stay. Some mornings I sort mail with a pen in my hand. Bills go in one stack, notes from Nora in another, Tasha's final receipts in a clear sleeve. Paper isn't romance, but it is relief. Dates and signatures and amounts that add up the right way feel like a floor under my feet. The old house is gone to a woman who loves gardens. The deed sits where it should. The key that matters lives on my ring in a place my fingers find without looking. I think about the blue box I once carried to a jeweler, the weight I traded so another woman could breathe longer. I don't regret it. A ring is a promise someone made to me once. A key is a promise I keep to myself every day. You learn the difference when you're done being borrowed. In the hallway mirror I sometimes catch my face when I'm not smiling for anyone. Not the silver at my temples or the map time drew near my mouth, those are honest. What I look for sits in my eyes, calm without apology. The kind of calm that can tell the truth without raising its voice. Boundaries live there now, easy and bright. Afternoons are mine, too. I mend a hem for a neighbor who pays in pound cake in gratitude. I read chapters that don't require brilliance to enjoy. I nap once a week like a person who believes the house will still be here when she wakes. At dusk the porch light clicks on, not as a beacon but as a clear sentence, welcome when invited. The air smells like cut grass and someone's dinner. The wind chimes 3 doors down, learn a new song. Every few days, Nora drops by with a joke and a list. We don't dissect the past, we preview the weekend. She reminds me to rest. I remind her I'm practicing. Rest isn't a prize for perfect behavior. It's a way to live. People think love without access means love without care. That's wrong. Love with respect stands on the porch and waits. It shows up on schedule. It teaches children that a closed door is still a kind door. At night I lock the bungalow with a turn I can trust. The key is light. The room is simple. I set tomorrow's cup on the counter and feel the day finish itself without ceremony. Peace doesn't announce itself. It keeps the appointment. The day doesn't ask permission anymore. It arrives, light shouldering through the kitchen window, steady as a metronome I don't have to fight. I grind coffee and rinse an apple. The sink sings a thin line of water. The bungalow holds quiet like it was built for it. Some mornings memory knocks, not a person, a habit. I let it stand on the porch and learn the rule again. Love shows up. Access asks first. That's the whole lesson written on one doorframe. Mail slots through with ordinary business. Dates and amounts and paid in fulls. Paper takes old noise and files it underdone. Nora texts a joke and a picture of the lamp we rescued from a yard sale, now perfect in my corner. Tasha sends the final utility read, a tidy last number. I clip it behind the others. Order doesn't sparkle. It steadies. The grandkids come on schedule, not as a tidal wave. They leave a drawing of a house with a big square smile and a key the size of the sun. I tape it to the fridge where it can teach the wall how to be kind. Jace thanks me from the porch. I hand him iced tea and keep the threshold honest. We talk weather. We talk tomatoes. We don't talk about the curb or the folder because we don't need to. Time has the wheel now. People think final means cruel. It means clear. In the afternoon I mend a sleeve for a neighbor and trade stitches for laughter. I sweep the small porch and watch a sparrow practice landing on the same rail until it gets it right. The world likes repetition when it keeps the right shape. So do I eat. Work a little. Rest. Open the window 2 inches. Lock it at night. Nothing dramatic. Everything chosen. Sometimes I open the fireproof case just to see the folder sitting there like a tired soldier finally off duty. Signed pages. Dated lines. Numbers that balance. Proof that I didn't win a fight, I ended one. Silence did the heavy lifting. Paper kept score. I still keep the blue jewelry box in the back of a drawer. Empty, lined in velvet, soft as forgiveness. I touch it with one finger and think of the ring I traded so another woman could keep breathing. I would do it again. Not because love owed me back, but because I like who I am when someone needs help. A ring is a promise someone made to me once. A key is a promise I make to myself every day. I carry the key. At dusk the porch light clicks on. A small sentence, welcome when invited. Wind moves through the leaves like a choir that knows the words without sheet music. The street lays down its last sounds. Inside, the bungalow gathers itself into one soft room, a square of lamplight and a chair that fits. I rinse the cup I'll use tomorrow and set it to dry. Peace doesn't announce itself. It keeps the appointment. I walk past the hallway mirror and stop. The glass gives me what it always does, truth and good lighting. Not the silver at my temples, not the map time drew around my mouth. Those are earned. What I look for sits behind them, calm without apology. The kind that can stand on a porch, offer iced tea, and keep its own key. I try the word out loud, not as a wish, as a fact I can hold, serene. Not a nickname. A setting. A choice I keep. People think strength is a shout. Mine is a door that closes soft and opens on purpose.